All right.
All right, we're on a 60-second warning.
All right, boss. I'm gonna have you sit out while he does his intro. Okay, I'm just gonna put you on the sideline for a second.
No worries.
30 seconds.
Oh man, forgot my apple juice. Darn it.
20 seconds. All right, 10 seconds. Gonna count you down from five, stopping at three. Live in five, four, three.
Here we go again. Welcome everybody to another episode of What You Gotta Say. Now that little number may be scrolling or it may not, but we're gonna turn it off for right now. Now, it happened again. Another Wild Black incident. But this is incredible. While it actually people are now calling it the Wild Black, and the newest one is playing lacrosse, Wild Black, involving police. Go figure. But in legal definitions, it's not a wild black. It's actually called racial profiling. Racial profiling is defined by Webster is the use of race or ethnicity as grounds for suspecting someone of having committed an offense. In layman's terms, you're black, you're guilty. Racial profiling is probably one of the most biggest things and one of the most scariest things that can happen into a young black man's life. Because if you look at racial profiling, it most of the time it ends up bad for the person of color. Remember one of the most famous racial profiles involving this gentleman and four other pastors? That was a landmark case won by Johnny Cochran in the state of New Jersey, where coming from a Baptist convention in Philadelphia, three pastors were in the car, pulled over by the police. One pastor dropped, the police officer made them all get out of the vehicle. Pastor got out of the vehicle, he dropped his wallet, and they opened fire, killing them. The case was represented by Johnny Cochran, and he calls it his his most incredible legal defining moment. Or this gentleman here, he is an Army lieutenant in North Carolina, which he was pulled over at a gas station and shot and killed by a police officer. Or this young lady here, she was only 8 days in having her driver's license. 8 days, ready to graduate high school and live her life. Pulled over, and because of her race profile, driving black in a drug infested neighborhood, and she was pulled over and killed. But one of my favorite people to be racially profiled. Anybody remember this one going viral? Yes, she was pulled over by a white police officer. She asked him why she was pulled over. He gave her all kinds of crazy excuses of why she was pulled over to find out that she is the state's district attorney. Incredible. Now, landmark case in the United States of Terry versus Ohio, which actually says that it's illegal to racially profile someone or illegal to pull someone because of where they're at or any location or even the clothes that they wear. It's the equivalent of saying that a woman deserved to be raped because she wore a mini dress. That's what the landmark case actually defines it as. You cannot say that a person is guilty because of their location, because of their color, because of what they're driving, where they're driving, or who's driving. Terry versus Ohio is one of the biggest things that happened in the state of New Jersey, where Camden had its special drug task force, and they were just locking people up just for being in a drug area. Terry versus Ohio is which was used to get all of them free and drop all of those cases. Now, here's the most incredible thing. Nothing drives fear into the heart of any parent than this incident right here. Your black child being pulled over by a tactically dressed white police officer. As we said before, it usually ends bad. And even when we start to get out and protest with all the Black Lives Matter, some people start to protest against the protesters who aren't police officers and kill black people or people of color or anybody who actually doesn't fit into their frame of mind. Which leads us to this group of young women. Here they are. The Delaware State University, historically black college, girls lacrosse team. They were pulled over, and this is what they ran into. Roll that clip for us, would you? Okay, let's stop it right there. Now, incredible stuff that the police officers did. And as incredible as it is, we're going to dive into this. We're talking about everything from the Constitution on and what you need to know about being pulled over or profile. And my co-host today is friend to the show, hailing from South Jersey, attorney. He is from the actual law group of the Warren Law Group. Am I correct, sir?
That is correct. Thank you, Vincent. Nice to see you again.
You too, Attorney Bruce Warren. Now, profiling is going crazy, even though there are laws against profiling.
It's nothing new, as we spoke of our last time we met, and you just made reference of the state police issue and the pastors that were coming back. I can tell you that the problem is so prevalent, and the Supreme Court recently had another ruling in which they said, hey, racial profiling is illegal in New Jersey. And when I talk about recent, we're not talking about the 80s and then the 90s and the 2000s. I'm talking about January 2022. That's just 5 months ago.
5 months ago, yeah.
5 months ago, and it was a Hamilton Township police officer who was radioed about suspects who robbed a 7-Eleven, and the only thing the officer knew was that they were males and that they were black. And that's the only identifying information that the officer had. The officer just started pulling people over. And that's just not what you do. You don't have enough information. You have to have what we call reasonable suspicion in order to stop a vehicle. And in order to search somebody, you have to have probable cause. So we can talk about those things in reality, and we hear police officers' jobs are tough. Lots of jobs are tough, and they're tough for a reason. The federal government gives us protections under the United States Constitution, and New Jersey gives us sometimes even enhanced protections under the New Jersey Constitution. So, and New Jersey can give you more than the federal government gives you.
Well, New
It never
Jersey is
gives you
a
less.
New Jersey is a police-friendly state.
It is now. When I started doing this, 20 years ago, it was police friendly. Then there was a shift to more for citizens' rights, and then it shifted back to a police friendly state. The warrant requirement is still a requirement, but it's one of those rules that says you have to have a warrant before you can do any search. If you don't have a warrant, it's deemed unreasonable. However, here's 30,000 exceptions to this warrant requirement. And looking at them, you could probably pick one out for almost everything that you come across. So it's, and then it gets even dicier when you look at these young ladies from Delaware. The officers were like, well, we didn't search the bus compartment. We didn't go and search them personally, but they went in and searched all the luggage. So,
did they have? Now you said that they had to have probable cause.
Correct.
You saw the actual cameras from the officers.
Yeah.
Did that look like probable cause?
No, it looked like, and they were guessing marijuana because of the age of the young ladies.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say age, that's what they said.
Yeah.
And they said, probably marijuana. Probably marijuana. I mean, that's what they were looking for. Not that they thought it was there. And what we call that's a hunch.
Oh, of course. A busload of young black women has to have marijuana.
Has to be marijuana. And when he says, marijuana is illegal, any amount of marijuana is illegal in Georgia. And then I always love this question. Anything you want to tell me? Anything you want to give me voluntarily? I'm like, my clients, I'm like, why'd you turn it over? Well, he asked for it. But, so, I was.
New Jersey does have the voluntary submission law.
It does, yeah. Which is great. And everybody says, what is that? Failing to surrender. I said, well, when you get drugs, in order not to violate the law, you're supposed to take them immediately to the police department and hand them over. So it's a strange law that we have there.
Yes, which makes the failure to surrender once they catch them on.
Right. Now, this, I think you have to look at this a little bit closer. So they're trying to downplay what happened and say, well, we just searched the luggage compartment. So to me, that means they just searched my trunk, and remember, it's not just searching your trunk; it's searching the contents of the trunk. So, do you need a warrant to get into the trunk? Let's say no, and then you see a bag inside the trunk. You need a warrant to get inside the bag. These are questions that the court in New Jersey and the Supreme Court has answered time and again, and the answer is depends. It just depends. If the officer says, well, I had a gut feeling because they were young women, college kids, and there must have been marijuana in those bags, that's not enough. But gut feelings don't do it.
Gut feelings does not qualify as actual, what is the term that they need?
Probable cause.
Okay. Yeah. When does gut feeling actually equates to probable cause?
It never does. And I've had cases in which, younger police officers have written in there, I had a feeling because they were in a known drug area that criminal activity was afoot. I don't even know what afoot means, but I think it means something like it's happening. So, those are these types of legal things they teach us to write. And if you recall, I was a police officer, and I still write some ways like that. Like, what am I writing? But it's those types of words and phrases are taught to police officers so they have a proper report, so that when they're questioned, they can revert back to that report and say, well, this is what I thought at the time. Now, I can't and I will not speak to what Georgia has, but let's forget that for a second. And remember, I said New Jersey can give you higher protections than the United States can. So
Yes.
the United States says there's a warrant requirement for a search unless it's, if there's no warrant, it's unreasonable. So these officers in Georgia did not have a warrant to search that bus. They did not have a warrant to search the luggage compartment. And I'm reading from what the university or Delaware University officials said. They are not letting this go. They're not going down without a fight. And yeah, this wasn't the kind of case that you see where people are yelling back and forth with the officers. It seemed to me, in my opinion, that these women were scared, and the coach was frustrated, and she said that she felt so bad because she was not in a position to protect her kids, and that made me sad. Like there used to be the police are the people you look to for help and for comfort and for safety. And that's changed a lot. That's changed a lot since video has been so prevalent and these stories are getting out there. And it's been, it's a sad decay of what's happening. And, to show it like that, it just, to hear, professionals indicating that they felt they had to protect their kids from the police, it's sad. Now, and forget about nice or not nice or yelling or not yelling. That has nothing to do with it. Violation of your rights can be very smooth. It can be transitional. You can make you feel like you're doing the right thing.
But you're still violated.
Right. Because you're going to hear, in your comments on this video, well, if they just would have done what they were supposed to do, what's the big deal? Nothing happened. It is a big deal. Because, it's the issue of when do you become detained? So they're doing a traffic detail where they're checking commercial vehicles for changing lanes. This is a changed lane situation.
Okay.
So the issue.
Hold on, Attorney Warren.
Yes.
We're gonna dissect this and start with the change lane, and we'll come right back because there's a point that I really want to hear with this. Sure. I'm going to inquire my co-host today, Attorney Bruce Warren from the Warren Law Group, and we're talking about, again, profiling and doing something while black. There we go again, and then we're going to talk about how we can actually avoid this. Now, I'll see you all in 2 minutes, 2 seconds.
Okay, we're out.
Yeah, change lane incident. Yeah, look, man, we're in the state of Georgia. There's still things that happen in the state of Georgia.
Yeah.
What was it? 2 years ago, they finally got the tape of the guy that they killed and said that he was trying to escape.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Some of these tapes come out way, much longer than they should. Nobody has, transparency. They only have transparency when they know there's other tapes out there. Yeah.
Uh-oh. I don't have class today. Why are they calling me? Yeah, that's the whole thing. And I mean, they're still waiting on. I think the state of Georgia appealed someone requesting the police body cams.
Yeah, the Freedom of Information Act request. I've asked officers on the stand if they pulled over my client because they were black. I asked them. I don't care. I just asked the question. I want to put it out there. Even if they say no, once you put it out there, somebody's thinking about it.
Well, yeah, it does stay in their mind. Well, look, it's already in their mind. Yeah. Okay, guys, right. Cut it short.
All right, going to count you guys down from 5, stopping at 3, live in 5, 4, 3.
Okay, so we're going to dissect this. Now, they got, before it led to all the searching and the drug sniffing dogs and, all of these scared young ladies, it was a traffic stop.
Correct.
Switching lanes.
Yes. For which no ticket was issued, by the way.
No ticket was issued, but he pulled them over.
Yeah, if you've heard the word pretext before, you might understand that sometimes when you have a stop like this, which results in a search, it's a pretext for the search. They want to get on that bus. They want to check out that luggage. So in order to do that, they need to pull the bus over for a valid reason. And I can tell you, this might frustrate some people, that if the police have a reasonable belief that you violated a traffic law, they can pull you over. They don't even have to be right.
So reasonable belief would be these girls going to this college in Georgia, whooping their behinds in lacrosse, and some bitter bee decides to make a Karen call and go, "Oh, these black athletes from Delaware have got marijuana on their bus."
Sure.
Would that be reasonable cause?
Yeah, and that's so they get the bus pulled over and they end up leaving um, without the issuing a ticket, without anybody talking about what the operation was, and then the chief of these police officers, who's also black, was saying that this was their job, that this is all they do is pull over commercial vehicles. Now, look, I don't know about that, but pulling over commercial vehicles for switching lanes, I don't know. It seemed like there was a special lane for commercial vehicles for buses, but
Okay. Now, in terms of the 50 state ruling, or the commonality that all 50 states have, in terms of pulling over, reasonable doubt, or even questioning, or even asking for a volunteer search, the only person that he can ask for who would actually give them the impression that they're under the influence would be the driver, correct?
It is but the driver cannot give consent to search
the
somebody
entire
else's bag, right? So if they're going into the luggage and they ask the driver to search the luggage, and they know it doesn't belong to the driver, or it's clear it doesn't belong to the driver, that's the issue.
But the driver can only give consent to search his area.
That's correct. But it's different in a passenger car than it is on a bus.
Right.
And we have the expectation of privacy. So the thing that we hold most private is our own bodies. You can't draw blood from me if I don't want you to. Secondly, would be our house, then our cars, place of employment. Certain areas that have higher protections than others. So driving on a bus, this is a private coach. This is just like a vehicle. I can't give consent for the officers to search you. If you're in my car and you have your briefcase on your lap, I can't say, I give you permission to search Vince's briefcase. It's clearly yours. It's in your possession, and you'd have to give consent. Now, if they have probable cause to believe it contains contraband, it smells like marijuana is emanating from there. I cannot believe sometimes the way the officers can sniff out marijuana or drugs. I mean, that's an incredible nose you have, officer, because
why do they need the dogs?
So, well, I guess the second part is, how long does it take to give a bus driver a warning? 4 minutes? 5 minutes?
5 minutes.
Why are you holding them for a half an hour?
Because now he has to get the dogs there.
Right. So you're not allowed to detain a person who has violated a motor vehicle offense for longer than it takes to issue that citation. Especially now with the electronic ones, you put in a license plate number or a driver's license number, all the information pops up.
You put up the code. Yeah, and it just spits out in less than 2 minutes.
Yeah. Even when I get pulled over, I'm like, why am I still sitting here for 20 minutes? What am I doing?
You get pulled over?
Yeah, I drive fast, so. But I'm like, I don't understand this now. But let's, if we're going to continue on racial profiling, you got to remember that our country has kind of waffled on this a little bit. Racial profiling was okay on September 12th, 2001. People wanted racial profiling. They wanted to make sure that there weren't terrorists out running around. And how did they determine that? Well, by the way people looked. And it almost gave like a green light for it to start happening again, because I found the courts were softer on it. But slowly but surely that's all been taken back. And the citizens have rights, and to be trampled on like that, just because they feel like they can is where you have to draw the line. Now, I hear talk about, well, the bus windows are too high, or the nobody could know who was on that bus before they pulled it over. Well, I don't know what anybody knew beforehand, but they didn't start searching it until they went on that bus and saw who was on there, and then they started searching the bus. Not
Well,
beforehand.
I think if they've got tipped off in terms of the actual theory of conspiracy of why or what led it to, if the police officers were going off of a fake tip, then they already knew who was on the bus and where the bus was going.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. It's going to be interesting because they'll be able to find out, through public record search, how many buses did they pull over that day, that week, that month, So if these things start to come out that it's not a special detail. They've only pulled over one bus in the last 3 weeks. It'll be interesting to see where it goes from there. And I'm not sure if the bus had like Delaware plates on it, if it was our bus or whatever it might be.
Well, more than likely, if it was chartered in Delaware, it's got Delaware plates.
Yeah, that's what I believe.
Yeah. So but it's illegal.
It is.
To profile.
Yes.
Okay. Yet they profile. How do they get away with profiling if it's illegal?
Well, it's easy to hide, because again, and I say this too often, though, but who's going to stick up for those who, the police officer had a hunch and they turn out to be right, and they find 5 pounds of cocaine in the back of a truck or a car. Now, who wants to stand up and protect them? And most of those people don't have.
Your public defender. He's going to fight to the death for you. Yeah.
Right. And sometimes those people are set up by other people who have money, and they're just couriers up and down I-95 corridor, so they don't have the money to fight when they get wrongfully profiled. But also, look, there was a tail light out. How many people I represent that got pulled over for something silly, like if you're going to break the law and distribute lots of drugs, but you got a brake light out. I mean, look, you got pulled over because you got a brake light out. Now, what happens after that is different. I mean, how long can you drive for? And I think you live down here where I do, where you drive up North Jersey. If I followed you for 5 miles, you think you'd make a mistake? You think you'd touch that white line on the right-hand side, the yellow line on the left-hand side?
No, I wouldn't.
But no. What if I said you did?
No, then, well, now we know that you're lying, but I also know that it's going to be your word against mine, and the judge is going to look at me and go, oh, yeah. Honest Vincent Squire's going to tell me.
And he's also going to look at me and go, why? The officer has no reason to lie. What does he benefit from lying? Why would he lie?
Because I'm here.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you get pulled over, and then they start asking the questions. I hate that question. Where are you coming from? I don't care where I'm coming from. Where are you going? Wherever I want to go.
I always say, okay, so what's the relevance in that? Yeah. Where am I coming from?
Now, and I think, and I don't want to go off topic, I think one of your questions was, okay, you get pulled over. What do you do?
Hold on. We're going to have to take a break to get into that segment. So we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back, and attorney Bruce Warren from the Warren Law Group is going to talk to us about what to do when we get pulled over, dealing with our First Amendment rights, our constitutional rights, and all those other great things like not incriminating yourself, the right to remain silent. And what a lot of people need to actually recognize is that right to remain silent. Oh, by the way, attorney Bruce, speaking of the lacrosse players, what player still has the record for the highest score in college lacrosse?
Well, I couldn't. Probably somebody from Duke or North Carolina, but no, I don't know.
Jim Brown.
Oh, wow.
We'll be right back. 2 minutes, 2 seconds.
Okay, we're on break.
Yeah, somebody threw that at me. a couple days ago. I was like, really?
That's funny.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go into what to do, rights, laws.
Yep.
But most of all, I think one of the biggest things that we need to tell, especially our young children, to do is just shut up, take the ticket,
Yep. Shut up.
fight it in court. That's just
Yeah.
my opinion.
Yeah, that's mine too.
Because what they don't understand is that the more cooperative they are, the less likely he's going to shoot you in the head.
Yep. I mean, it's a real fear for, like you said, for parents. I mean, and you know, it's for parents of people of color. I mean, it's such an actual thing they have to think about every day.
Yeah, during the George Floyd case, and we had the call-in section. I had one woman who called in and says, she's worried about her son every day because he works for a contractor that does public housing in Camden.
Yeah.
Doing the repairs. So I said, okay, that's a whole different fear.
Yeah, that is.
I said, now, and she said, well, my kid's white and I fear for his life. I'm like, okay. Do you fear that when your child leaves your house, do you have a fear that he's going to be pulled over and shot by a cop?
Right. Exactly.
Like, no. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly the thing. I mean, you can have a reasonable fear of being a crime victim, but being a crime victim to the police is completely different.
Yeah. Because I mean, the biggest fear in the world is that you're going to be victimized by the person who's supposed to be protecting you.
Yep.
Okay. All right, Chaz, let's cut it short.
You're already live, Vincent.
Okay, great. I guess we missed the countdown. So, Attorney Warren, let's look at what we should do.
Well, and I think I'll start off with what you have to do. You have to pull over? Yes. There have been cases in which fake police officers were pulling over women and sexually assaulting them.
Right.
In those cases, and when that came out, I heard some superiors, some officers, state police say, if you're scared, call 911. Call 911, tell them where you're at, that you're being pulled over. They can confirm if that's an actual police officer or not, and they can let you know. So, you don't want to start off on a high-speed chase. Maintain a reasonable speed and make the call. So let's put that aside and say, yes, you have to pull over.
Been there, done that. You know why it doesn't work? Because the police officer was pissed off because we didn't pull over exactly where he wanted us to.
I done that too. Like, I want to go. I'm being careful about where I stop because I don't want him to get run over.
Yeah.
So I'll pull into a parking lot. If there's no shoulder, I'm not stopping in the middle of the road.
Exactly.
So then you're already starting off. There's going to be a confrontation. And, so what do you think? Also comes to your window and asks for your credentials. Do you have to give it to them? Yes. If you're the driver, you have to give it to them. The ability to use public roadways is a privilege and not a right, meaning you can be stopped from doing it. To have a driver's license is a privilege and not a right, so they can take it away from you. So yes, you have to give them your ID. Do you have the right to remain silent after that and answer no questions? Yeah. Don't say anything. Where are you coming from? Well, over there.
Should you express to the officer that you are exercising your right to remain silent?
I do not. And I do answer questions because I feel friendly. So I find that when that happens, you're already, I'm trying to get out of the ticket. So I'm being friendly, and Say, oh, I was just here, or always like to say, well, yeah, I just left court. So they don't.
Okay. Let me play advocate here.
Yeah.
I think it may be easier for you because you're a white attorney.
Yes. Nobody messes with me. I mean, I have not had the experiences that I have seen on TV. I have not had the experiences that my clients tell me about. Do I believe them? Absolutely. But I have never had those experiences. I've had cops yell at me, and then I get upset or angry back. I'm like, why are you talking to me that way? I mean, I haven't raised my voice to you, so I was going too fast. I don't know why you're so upset, officer. I'm the one who's about to, get a $500 ticket. But, but if especially, so you've been pulled over and maybe you had a drink for dinner, and they ask you, why do they want to know where you're coming from? They want to know if you were drinking. That's the question. Why do they care if I was coming from, Aunt Betty's house? They don't care. They want to hear I was coming from Capitol Grove. I just had a meeting with my friends. So that's why they ask where you're coming from. Do you have to answer that question? No. Can you lie about that? Yes. But I think that the situation.
Oh, you're lying.
Yeah. Right. I mean, the situation dictates what you should do.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody treats you with respect and they're courteous, feel free to treat them the same way back. But if it's hostile from the get-go, I have nothing to say to you. I had a guy coming yesterday. He was a person of color. He got 12 tickets, one traffic stop, 12 tickets. I'm like, I don't think I've ever seen somebody with 12 tickets before.
Wow.
No accident, no nothing, just 12 tickets. I mean, I had to look up some of these statutes because I didn't know what they were. So, and I said, did you have a problem? Because I had a huge problem being pulled over because I felt that I was being profiled and I was mad and I should not have been pulled over. Because, some of the tickets for like not having the light bulb on the back of your license plate. That's, stuff like that.
Really?
The air freshener on the mirror, which is not a violation, by the way. But people get pulled over for it. No, if you read the law, it says it has to interfere with your view. Well, the mirror is here, and your view is here.
Air freshener's down here.
Yeah, so that's nonsense. That's just, that's not a real ticket. It's a reason they pull you over. So what happens here, because I always get this question, what about your passenger? So, cops always they always want to know who's in the car. Who's in the car? Who's that? Who's that? Who's that? Let me see your ID. Absolutely not. There's no reason, unless they're conducting an investigation and you're detained, then you have to produce ID. But if they're just asking who you are, I want to check you for warrants. That's not an investigation.
Well, wait a minute. I heard from one cop who said, according to the Patriot Act, all passengers have to show their identification.
No, and remember, the Patriot Act is a federal law, so you have more protections under New Jersey law. So you don't have to identify yourself if you're a passenger in a vehicle unless they're conducting some type of an investigation. Now, if they get pulled over for a lane change or an air freshener or speeding, what's that to do with a passenger in the vehicle? Absolutely nothing. So, it's those types of cases that are frustrating. In 20 years, Vince, I've never had a client tell me, I'm so happy I talked to the cops that day, because it doesn't happen. And then people call me all the time, for a consult, like, oh, the police want me to meet with them. I'm like, why would you do that? No, they want to give me a chance to tell my side. Like, no, they want to give you a chance to lock yourself into a story. I said, absolutely not. Why didn't you do anything? Okay. Don't go to the police. Don't go to the police. Don't go to the police. So, and invariably people are so concerned about why the police, trying to find me, or that they always want to go and see what's going on and then say something. These experienced investigators and interrogators are very, very good. And they know how to lead you into a question, answer that you don't want to give. And then you look back and go, I don't know why I even said that. So yeah, again, no one's ever said, I'm so happy I talked to the police that day. So it doesn't work out to your benefit. And there's, at this point, to act to exercise your rights and assert your rights, not just exercise your right, but to assert your rights is becoming more mainstream. And it's really a reaction to what has happened to people of color in this country for a long time. And, it's still looked down upon by a majority of Americans. Like, well, why are you talking back to the police? Or why don't you just listen to them? Why don't you just give them, why don't you just lay down? Why don't you just give them your hands? Why don't you just do this? Well, because, the idea of, do you have to follow an unlawful order by the police? So I don't know. Now
Do you?
the courts have said different things. My idea is what you and I were talking to on the break, that I'd rather be cooperative on the scene, and I take my fight in the courthouse. You see a police officer that we see on these videos and body cams dealing with everyday citizens, and they're screaming and yelling. You see them in court, you don't even know who they are. Like, you're that same guy that was so tough out there. That you're not so tough in here. So it's better to deal with it in the courtroom. To protect yourself, not to escalate it. And it's not. I feel so bad saying that because they shouldn't have to be thinking about that. Nobody should have to be thinking about, I don't want to escalate this. I don't want to get shot. But you have to. You have to think about it. It's not worth your life. You deal with it in a courtroom, whether it be a civil rights lawsuit or defending yourself against bogus charges. Deal with it inside that courthouse.
Because of the simple fact that you can know the law like the Attorney General and was dead to rights. In terms of the law and why she was pulled over, she was absolutely right. It was an illegal stop.
Yeah.
Yet, if it wasn't for the fact that she made a phone call to her secretary to tell this cop that she's the Attorney General, it could have went bad for her.
Right. Yeah, and and I'm not surprised when I heard she's not allowed to do that. A judge cannot identify themselves as a judge to a police officer to get out of the ticket. And the Attorney General, she was so nice. She was calm. She was polite. She informed the officer. The officer was visibly scared by the time he was done with that traffic stop, and well, he should be.
He should be.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Look, there are people who treat police poorly just because they're police, and there's people that the police treat poorly just because they want to. It's not.
But usually there's a different dichotomy in terms of race.
Absolutely. There's a study out that happened in New Jersey, and I think it was a couple of years ago, that African Americans are 3.5 times more likely to get pulled over than their white counterparts.
No. Guess what the study is now?
Much higher.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, in fact, there was a
7 out of 10.
Yeah. Well, there was a further study that showed how they were treated, how people of color were treated as compared to the white folks, and they were. I mean, it was. I forget the number. It had to be like 80% were treated worse than their white counterparts. Brutally, coarse language, threatening, intimidating. And
being beat up while they're yelling, "Stop resisting."
Yes, and in the police academy, they teach us. When I went to police academy a million years ago, but using your voice is one of your weapons. Your body language and keeping control of the situation is one of your weapons. So that's when you see officers rise up, speak big, talk big, and indicate that we're not going to argue. You're not going to argue with me. Those are things that are taught to police officers to control a situation, but that's not. That was 20 years ago, and it's still happening. It's just there's no need for it in this day and age. People are. You don't need to. They're used to on my ticket book when it used to be paper or carbon copy tickets. On the front of the ticket book, I'll never forget this. I became a police officer because I wanted to be a better criminal defense lawyer. I never wanted to be a police officer. I wanted to know how they did it. So I joined and was a police officer. But the front of my ticket book said in bold letters, capitals, "Do not lecture the driver." Right on it. Because even then, this is 1994, 1996. even then, they knew there's no reason for it. Why are you doing that? Don't lecture me. And there is such a
Because
thing.
it's condescending.
Yeah, yeah. Just write the ticket and give me a warning. Take your pick, either one. But there's no need to talk to people, talk down to people for even their poor driving habits. You're doing your job. If they violated the law, give them a ticket. You don't have to lecture them because that's how things escalate. And it doesn't start. People are not out looking to get pulled over and start a fight with a police officer.
Because he just now poured salt into the wound.
Yeah.
First of all, I'm in a no-win situation because you happen to be the one with the badge and the gun. Second of all, you're the one dictating the law in which I had allegedly broke. Now you're going to give me a ticket. I'm going to lose a day's worth of work, which more than likely I'm going to have no win in court.
Yeah.
And to add insult to all of that, you're going to lecture me?
Right. And it's not. It's money's always an issue, but when you have to sit in Camden Municipal Court for 7 hours, that's the punishment. It's not your points. It's sitting in court waiting to have your case called for hours upon hours.
Wait, and Camden Court air conditioning only works twice a week.
It really does. I'm like, I can't. But it's. And I had to say, and as much as I like to talk about the topic, I'll never understand it the way people of color understand what it feels like. I can only imagine, and I've been doing this for so long. And I'll tell you, when I first started as a criminal defense lawyer, I didn't always believe when people told me these things. What are you talking about? It doesn't happen. And then I really, you can only hear it so many times when you start believing it. And now, starting probably 10 years ago, now I see it. We all see it.
Well,
we all see it, but it's
you get to see it now because everybody's got cameras.
Right.
But let's go back to what I hate to do or hated to have to do was to give my son the talk.
Yeah.
The talk that my father gave me, that his father gave him. Because young black men, past my grandfather, would run into police officers and never come home.
Right. When I started as a police officer, and parents would be, walking with their kids, and the kids say, if you're not good, this officer's going to arrest you. I don't always get upset about that. I'm like, the police are supposed to be somebody you come to. Don't make them afraid of us. And now, we did that ourselves. I mean, really, are we somebody you want to run to as a child now, or somebody you want to run away from as a child?
More than likely, run away from. Did you see? Look at the actual terror on those girls' face when this police officer got up there and said, "If you don't tell me now, it's going to get worse for you."
Yeah, I meant to say that to you earlier, and because we see a lot of videos and they're hand selected. A lot of these videos you see are hand selected because I see a lot more. I'm like, well, why isn't this mainstream public news? But where it's the citizen arguing with the officer. And this video is much different because these children. My daughter's 18. So they're scared. I mean, they are actually scared. So that's really what it came down to. You're in Georgia. You're miles and miles away from home. You don't know anybody down there, and you have a swarm of police officers on your bus, going through your bags. I mean, they're looking out the window, and that's my bag. And
not to mention you're scared that if they don't find anything, they'll plant something.
Well, yeah, and one of the young ladies says, we were pretty calm because we knew we didn't have anything. I mean, that's not the point. And I appreciate why she said that. That's not the point. You shouldn't. You don't have to be. You got to be. You can stay calm, but be upset. I mean, it's upsetting to see. And again, you'll have people that'll just say, well, look, it slowed them down for 25 minutes, half an hour. No harm, no foul. Well, there is a harm and there is a foul. Our Constitution protects us from that. And these officers, just like I have done as an attorney and a police officer, sworn to uphold the Constitution. Well, what'd you forget? I was a young public defender once in a small town in New Jersey, and for Christmas I got every officer a copy of the Constitution. I just, it's like, I'm not sure if you guys ever seen this before, but I handed it out for Christmas. I'm like, read this. I mean, it's interesting. You should take a look at it. But and I did that.
I explained to one officer that I have a constitutional right to a phone call. Yeah. He told me, "Oh yeah, well they didn't have a telephone when they wrote the Constitution."
Yeah.
Like, you dumbass. you hillbilly.
I don't, I say this because I argue for a living, and even when other lawyers call me on the phone or I talk to a prosecutor, I try not to argue. I argue in court. I don't need to argue, but I just listen and nod and kind of smile. Like, my time will come, but now's not the time. But it's, I couldn't imagine, being threatened or being harassed just because of the way I look or the color of my skin, and what that does to a person, raises that anger or that fear. But it was, it was real. I mean, those ladies were afraid.
Well, this is not only did they violate their oath that they took to protect and serve, and to be an officer of the court or an actual public servant. Most important to me, what they did was they stole those young ladies' humanity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they really did. I mean, this is something they're never going to forget. I mean, no. I think I remember every time I've been pulled over by the police, and I can't remember every experience, but it's something that you're not used to, and all you're trying to do is you just want to get home. You just trying to go home. It's not a party bus; it's a charter bus. They just want to go home. So it's something they're never going to forget, and from what I've seen and read, I don't think the school's going to forget it or let it go.
Okay.
I think there'll be more to it. And if in fact their rights were violated, they have an actionable case against the state and against the police, and then they can try to file suit, and and see if the court agrees or a jury agrees that their rights were violated. It would be a jury from Georgia, not from Delaware, but from Georgia. But that's what you can do. And a lot of times I get those calls and people like, the officer did this, and I don't do too much civil rights work when I send it out. There are lawyers who do it. But that's the remedy. It's not just getting out of trouble. So you can defend yourself because of what the police did wrong. But then you also have your own offense. And you can go out and sue under Section 1983, has nothing to do with the year, which is a civil rights violation, and say, hey, you violated my rights, now you got to pay me.
But by the way, the state of New Jersey, for you to do that, you have to do it within 30 days of the incident.
You got to send them. You got to ask permission to sue them first.
Yes.
Yeah, and again, this what happened with the Floyd case was, this talk about if something happens and somebody who works for me does something wrong, that's on me. It's coming back to me. And the talk was, the officer who murdered George Floyd, you can't sue him. If you sue him and win, Minnesota's paying that bill. He's not paying that bill.
That's right.
So if you made some personal liability that the actual actor, the bad apple, or apples, the ones who actually did the harm, take it out of their pocket. Look,
he even sidestepped that by his wife divorcing him and getting everything.
Oh yeah.
So, all right. So first and foremost, have everything: driver's license, registration, insurance.
Yeah.
Immediately available. Keep your hands.
Do not put your insurance on your phone. Don't hand over your phone and say, "Here's my insurance." You can do that now. Legally, I can prove insurance by showing you my phone, and the screenshot of Geico or that's now legal. Don't give somebody your phone. You don't want anybody swiping on your left or right. So have everything in paper and have it ready to go.
Okay. Second thing. Do not argue back. Do not argue your case with him in the street, because in the streets right now at that particular time, he has all power.
Yeah, he's going to win that fight, or he or she's going to win that fight every time.
Third, you can record the session that you're having with the officer.
Absolutely. Yep.
And he cannot demand your recording device.
No, and I've seen videos where they try to, people have their phones locked all the time, and look, you're going to record it. If they touch it, it's going to lock up. They're not going to get it. It always makes me nervous. I'm like, somebody's going to break that phone before you get the evidence off. But
even if they break it, there's still a chip inside of it.
Yeah. So it's yes, absolutely. And a lot of people nowadays, and I've seen with clients, is they have dash cams. Now the dash cams are usually pointed out front on the street, and then behind them, and they're usually used for traffic accidents. But there's a lot of dash cams you can turn around. You're sitting there and you get pulled over and it's facing forward. You just flip that around and now it's facing you, and so you can see and hear everything. It's really what they're saying is the most important thing. You don't have to see them, but what they're saying to you is most important in your defense. And if you feel like they're violating your rights.
And if you're asked permission to search any part of your vehicle, you can say no.
You can. And
however, they can detain you.
Well, maybe. So if you're pulled over for a traffic violation and they say, look, you can allow me to search your car or I'm going to get the dog. Well, you can't threaten me. That's not voluntary consent, first off. Or I'm just going to impound it and get a warrant. That's not voluntary consent. But that's what happens. They scare you into it. Well, what do you have to hide? Well, nothing. I don't have the time or the inclination to allow you to search my car. And there are cases that say you can't ask unless you have some reasonable, articulable suspicion, meaning that you can articulate why you asked them to search the car, not just because you wanted to. Well, I asked them to search the car, and they said yes. Well, why'd you ask them? What was your suspicion? I don't know. Drug area, color of their skin. I don't know.
Well, it's legal in New Jersey now, so he can have all the probable cause he wants. He still can't do it.
Right. Exactly right.
And not unless they came up with another law, you can't smoke marijuana while driving.
Yeah. No. It's going to, the marijuana cases are going to go through the roof soon. And right now, as an aside, they're trying to determine if a police officer can tell that you're under the influence of drugs enough to say you're guilty of DUI. So they're not scientists, they're not doctors, but you're allowed the police officer to testify. Well, yeah, they were under the influence because I did a few tests with a pen.
That doesn't work with marijuana.
No.
Okay. No. Now, if he happens to be eating multiple bags of chips and laughing hysterically, then yeah. So, okay. So most important is make it home and call your attorney, especially if you recorded it.
Yeah, I don't suggest, and again, this is something that I hate having to say, is like, I don't suggest running to internal affairs. And no. I tell you why, because you want to deal with your case first. If you're going to tell me that I've done something wrong, I'm going to make every effort to make sure I win that case against you first.
Mm-hmm. Including drumming up more charges.
As a past municipal prosecutor, as I was for quite some time in Camden County, I would know in advance that there was an IA complaint on this case. I would know. They were just, it would be known that there's an IA complaint in this case. And a lot of the cases, I'd say, well, look, if there's an IA complaint, let's send it somewhere else. But those cases, they talk about it. They know about it. And, they want to be shown that they're right. So deal with your case first and then deal with what you got to do afterwards.
See, that's what makes that 30-day rule stupid.
Yeah.
Because once you put in for it, now the cop is gunning for you.
Yeah. And and really, what does IA do? It's just like, we see all these people investigating themselves. I mean, that's great. Let's investigate ourselves and say, okay, well, you did this, you shouldn't have done this. What does that do for the citizen? I don't know. So, and then when the department says the officer violated your rights, does that mean that you can sue and win automatically? And it's just, you're asking people to tell on themselves is not the best way to do things.
True. So now that you've got all your evidence on your cell phone and you need to call an attorney. Attorney Warren, how can people reach you?
My phone, I'll give you my number. It's 856-494-6930, or you can search the Warren Law Group. We're out of Gloucester County. We're in Deptford, and I'll be happy to talk to you.
Great. Well, thanks again. I really enjoy you co-hosting with me.
Thank you.
But for the rest of us, it's still one of the most scary things that you're ever going to run into, being pulled over by a police officer.
Absolutely.
Listen, you may have him dead to rights. You could have done everything perfect, yet you will still lose. The objective is not to have an argument in the street. The objective is to have an argument in the court. The objective is for you to get home. Let your parents, if you're younger, let your parents get you an attorney. Call Attorney Warren. He's got a whole lot of friends. They would just love to sue these police officers and get you paid. But in the meantime, the objective is to come home and come home alive. I'm Vincent Squire. If God's will, we'll be back. In fact, tomorrow we've got comedian Sandy Hackett, son of the great comedian Buddy Hackett, and it'll be Freestyle Friday. So, God's will, I'll see you all tomorrow. Peace.
Okay, we're out.
All right, Jazz.
All right, good stuff, guys.
Thank you,
Okay.